Hey, dropout. Translate this in an hour. I glanced at the documents handed to me with a mocking laugh. It appeared to be a contract written in French. It might be too hard for you without a college degree, but get it done in less than an hour. Behind those mocking words, I could sense the intent of ridicule. They were thinking I'd probably fail and wondering how they could make fun of me if I did. The surrounding coworkers watched the exchange with a mix of sympathy and disbelief. Reading such a document would take less than 3 seconds. As I quickly scanned the content, I was taken aback because it detailed an unbelievable deal. I've skimmed through it, and this contract is just absurd. What? No way you read that so quickly. Facing his Ray's angry voice, I calmly pointed out the errors in the documents. My name is Sam. I'm a regular office worker at a certain company. Well, starting today, I'll be working at the New York headquarters. Growing up in a poor family, I started working on the ground at this company right after middle school. Back then, it was just a part-time gig, but eventually, I was hired full-time. My coworkers were kind, and despite my limited formal education, they taught me a lot, from the job itself to math and even languages. I learned a lot on the job. I always believed that what I learned would one day benefit the company and contribute to its growth. With that mindset, the company helped shape me into a respectable professional, recognizing my skills and eventually trusting me with an assignment to an overseas branch. Although my first venture abroad presented numerous challenges, it was rewarding, and I was able to build good relationships with the locals. To be honest, I have been offered higher positions multiple times, but always declined because I prioritized hands-on work at the branch. It was a decision many people regretted, but they respected my choice and let me proceed how I saw fit. Thanks to that, our overseas branch got on the right track, generating stable revenue. So I've proudly returned to the New York headquarters. Though my departure was bittersweet for many at the branch, I know they've grown enough to run it on their own. Many came to the airport to bid me farewell, bearing loads of gifts and bouquets. I waved back at them, heading back to the States. I'm going to serve as a regular worker at the New York headquarters for a while to get accustomed to working there. I've missed my home country and regard my coworkers like family, so I was eagerly anticipating my return. I gazed out of the airplane window, lost in thought. After a long time away, I was excited about returning to the States and to the impressive new building of headquarters. Starting today, this is my workplace. As I looked around the spacious office, Harry gave a brief introduction about me. The coworkers, many of whom I didn't recognize, greeted me with applause. The only familiar face seemed to be Harry. For now, I'll be assigned to the sales department, where Harry works to get a grasp of the atmosphere and work routine of the New York headquarters. There's talk about me taking up a significant position later on, but revealing that now might intimidate some coworkers. So for now they introduced me as just another coworker returning from the branch. Starting from today, I look forward to working here. With that greeting, I bowed my head, and the coworkers greeted me with warm applause. I thought this was a great workplace. I never imagined that among the young, motivated coworkers, there would be someone with malicious intent. On the first day, I focused on understanding the workflow, getting to know clients, and familiarizing myself with ongoing contracts. That's when I was introduced to a young man named James, a graduate from a prestigious university and showing promise as a rookie just a year after joining the company. Nodding in agreement with Harry's words that we both have something to learn from each other, I introduced myself. I'm Sam. Nice to meet you. I extended my hand for a handshake. After a quick glance, James introduced himself in a somewhat irritated tone. I'm James. Regardless, I was now set to work with James. Thinking back, there was a sense of discomfort from the beginning. Sam, right? Keep in mind that I'm the senior here after all. Oh, understood. The moment the department head left, his tone and attitude turned curt. However, I figured for a young and talented guy like him, Mentoring a middle-aged man over from a branch office must seem like a tedious task, so I decided not to let it bother me. Perhaps I shouldn't have been so accepting of his demeanor. For about the first week, I was able to learn the nature of the job by observing James at work. Since he didn't give me any explicit directions, I'd assumed it was a learn-by-watching kind of situation, but it seems I was mistaken. "You're just sitting next to me collecting a paycheck, aren't you?" A little old to be doing that. That day, out of the blue, he dropped that comment, and I was taken aback. I had been diligently taking notes while watching James's work, ensuring I understood the workflow. I made it a point to remember all our clients and contract details and was already strategizing about future dealings. But to him, it seemed like I was slacking off. Before I could even explain the misunderstanding, James turned to chat with a passing female coworker. "Where's that coffee going?" "It's for Harry's office." "He has a visitor," the female coworker responded. James quickly took the tray from her without even glancing at her puzzled expression. He turned to me and said, "You're just hanging around today too, aren't you? Do this simple task." I carefully took the tray, making sure not to spill the coffee. But it's okay. Let's get the guy who's been doing nothing all week to do some work, all right? Please take it to the reception room." The female coworker, looking troubled, gave a slight bow, and James said, "No need for that." "Now get moving," pushing me along with those words. Though I was confused, it was still a task I had been assigned. If I didn't hurry, I'd end up making the guests wait. Understood. Saying that, I carried the coffee to the reception room. From then on, his arrogant attitude only got worse. He blatantly looked down on me, hurling insults my way. I wondered what I had done to upset him. I couldn't recall doing anything to deserve such disdain, leaving me puzzled. Nevertheless, I'm currently in a position to learn under him at work. I had no choice but to endure it. "Hey, old man, copy this for me. We need it for the meeting, so make sure you get enough copies for all the members." A stack of papers was thrown carelessly at me. As I bent down to pick up the papers I had dropped, I could hear James's mocking voice. Typical old man, so useless. With just those words, he returned to his desk without another glance in my direction. A sympathetic coworker tried to help me, but after getting a sharp look from James, he just said, "Sorry," with a regretful look on his face. "Don't worry about it. It's my job." I replied to the kind coworker while gathering the documents. Afterwards, I made copies for everyone, secured them with paper clips, and made my way to the conference room. "You're late." The moment I entered, I was met with a shout. I thought there was still time before the meeting began. Confused, I distributed the documents to the coworkers. The meeting time was moved up. A female coworker whispered to me. It seemed I hadn't been informed of the change in schedule. Feeling like a small act of malice had pierced my heart, I took my seat. "Why are you sitting? You're not part of this meeting, old man." James's sharp voice echoed throughout the conference room. "I'd like to understand about the new product." I responded, feeling the situation was completely unfair. At that, James visibly scowled. "We're telling you to leave because even if you listen, it won't be of any use." His disgruntled voice drew the attention of everyone in the room. Some looked annoyed, some pitied me. Their glances hurt, and I decided that staying would only be a nuisance. "I understand. Excuse me." I quietly said that and left the conference room. Behind the door I had softly closed, I bit my lip with sadness and frustration. I had returned to the NY headquarters to work, yet they wouldn't let me do anything. Still, I'm not in a position to defy James right now. Harry told me to learn from him. I don't want to let him down. If I can't attend the meetings, all I can do is dive deep into the documents, research the details, and understand them throughout the hours-long meeting. I did what I could in my own way. The new product discussed in the meeting was set to be pitched to a major international company. James is at the center of this project. He's running around various places as if he's forgotten about my existence. Right now, I'm left behind in the office, sorting and processing the expense documents he told me to handle. Occasionally, there are receipts mixed in that shouldn't be processed as expenses, so I discreetly set them aside for later clarification. I plan to ask about the details later. However, for such a big project, I think James is making too many unilateral decisions. Each time he returns, he gives instructions to the coworkers, but he seems to be the only one who knows the detailed status of things. This way, tasks that need to be done or networking when he's not around can't be completed. I believe the product is being manufactured in a factory, but has he checked on its operation status? Looking around, many coworkers seem unsure about what to do next, their hands idle. While I'm pondering this, James returns. His face is flushed, filled with elation. Walking back with great pride, he approaches me with a smug look on his face. "Hey, old dropout, translate this in an hour," he says. I glance at the documents handed to me with mocking laughter. It appeared to be a contract written in French. "It might be too hard for you without a college degree, but get it done in less than an hour," he adds. I call out to James as he is about to walk away. "Hold on. This is a contract for a new product, right?" "Yeah, so what?" he responds, scoffing. I've skimmed through it, and this contract is just absurd. "What? No way you read that so quickly," he says, raising his voice in anger. I calmly point out the errors in the documents. First, the amount listed here is off. The contract itself is simple enough that anyone could read it in a few seconds. I begin by reading out the contract quickly. Not just James, but the other coworkers also look at me in surprise. The wording seems fine, but this is in Euro notation. "What? What are you talking about? That can't be right," James exclaims, snatching the contract from me and taking another hard look at it. He is visibly shaken by the amount listed. The fact that the amount is sneakily written in small, messy handwriting suggests that the other company is definitely shady. Still, if one were to carefully check, it would be obvious. To begin with, it's clear they're taking us lightly if they think they can pull something like this. Thankfully, the contract hasn't been finalized yet. There's still a chance to fix things. "Can someone please call Harry as soon as possible?" I ask. "Whoa, old man, don't go making decisions on your own," James shouts. I glance at the shouting James and quickly think about my next move. "James, the contract mentions that we need to provide samples before the deal, right?" "Yeah, that's right. It's a big deal. That's standard procedure," he replies. "Have you informed the factory about this?" In my words, James hesitates. Most likely, the factory wasn't informed about the sample provision. Come on, even without saying, we surely have some samples ready, don't we? We can't be sure of how many surplus units we have without checking with the factory. I explain. I immediately made a call to the factory. The workers there, surprised by the urgent call from the NY headquarters, promptly connect me to the factory manager who, fortunately, was nearby. I quickly brief him on the current situation and check how many samples we can provide. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to meet the numbers our client had specified. I know it's a stretch, but can we ramp up production to meet the deadline? For you, Sam, we'll make it work. Don't sweat it, the factory manager says, willing to cooperate. I felt sorry, but it seemed like we would have to ask the workers for some overtime. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I send my deepest gratitude to them. Sam, what on earth happened? Harry arrives. James, pale-faced, pleads with the director. Director, this guy messed with my contract. Everyone present knew that James was the one who initially brought the contract. He probably wasn't aware of the nonsense he was spouting. However, it was clear he was trying to pin his mistake on me. This realization made me profoundly sad. Harry, there were discrepancies in the contract. Here's the translated version, I say. Upon reading the document I handed over, His face changes. If we went through with this deal, our company would suffer immense losses. We haven't finalized the deal yet. I'll contact the client. H. What do you think you're doing? It's my contract. I'll make the call. James insists. James, keep quiet for a moment. Harry sternly interrupts. Sam, can I trust you with this? Of course you can, I responded. Harry's words, filled with trust, make me nod in agreement. I'd immediately contacted the client. As I begin conversing fluently in French, everyone in the office stares at me in surprise. However, I can't be concerned with that now. Time was of the essence. I've secured an appointment. I'll head over to their office right away. I'll accompany you, Harry says. We quickly tidy ourselves up and begin preparations to head to the client's office. If that's the case, I'll go too. James tries to persist, but Harry gives him a cold stare. Do you even comprehend the gravity of what you've done? James is at a loss for words, and I say nothing. Now is not the time for that. Leaving a visibly exhausted James behind, we leave the office. As a result, we successfully negotiate with the client and manage to make a deal that satisfies both parties. At first, they seemed to look down on us, but when I began speaking in their language, they quickly changed their attitude and engaged in a balanced conversation. It seems they never intended to act so unscrupulously from the beginning. They realized there was an oversight in the contract and mentioned how relieved they were that a competent representative came to rectify it. Apparently, James's French was hard to understand, and to make matters worse, rather self-absorbed. While we do conduct our transactions in English, it's not their native language. That's precisely why one must be cautious with pronunciation and word choice. James's way of speaking lacked sincerity. This, combined with other issues, frustrated them, and they thought of slightly intimidating us. They didn't expect us to take such a contract seriously and actually consider it. At the same time, they had intended to sever ties with any company willing to finalize such an agreement carelessly. Our new James was rude, but you guys were also out of line, I say. Upon hearing this, the executives from the client side gave a wry smile and apologized for testing us. Moving forward, I believe we can engage in mutually beneficial transactions. After that, we shook hands, had a friendly chat, and then returned to the New York headquarters. I return to the New York headquarters and enter the office, which is still buzzing with unease. Soon, coworkers rush over to me. The contract has been amended to the appropriate amount and will provide the sample products as promised. I informed them upon sharing that the director and I had renegotiated the deal, ensuring a positive business relationship in the future. The co-workers collectively sighed in relief and celebrated the good news. Amidst the jubilation, a young man stood alone, glaring at me. It was James. What the hell, man? You stole my thunder. Cold stares surrounded the yelling James. James, do you realize how much trouble you've caused everyone this time? As I questioned him calmly, it seemed to strike a nerve, and he started ranting like a tantruming child. Why should I care? If everyone had listened to me, everything would have gone smoothly. I did nothing wrong. Everything would have been fine without your meddling. I'm not at fault, definitely not at fault. With each of his outbursts, the atmosphere grew colder, and it seemed my patience had reached its limit. Enough is enough. My voice echoed throughout the office. You should be ashamed, being an adult and not being able to accept your own mistakes. Quietly yet with stern authority, I addressed him. James stood there, lost for words. The co-workers just stared at me with shock while Harry gave a wry smile. This could have been avoided if you hadn't acted on your own. There's nobody else here competent enough except me. No one paid heed to James's lone outburst. Why is it always me who's in the wrong, and you, old man, are always right? My name is Sam, so do not call me old man, I replied firmly. You've never once called me by my name, have you? Why would I? Someone like you doesn't deserve that kind of respect. Seeing James refuse to accept his mistakes to the very end made me sad. James, Sam here have been instrumental in setting up our overseas branches and has been a pillar of support for 10 years. But he's just a guy without a college degree. It's true, I didn't graduate from college, but ever since then, I've dedicated my life to this company. At the words of both Harry and me, everyone in the office, including James, was speechless. He's in a completely different league than you, both in skills and experience. I hoped you would learn from Sam. I was mistaken. The words from Harry, clearly expressing his disappointment, left James utterly deflated. After that, I no longer saw James around the office. He wasn't fired. The company tried to let him go, but I intervened. Though arrogant and self-centered, he is still young. He should have the chance to start over. Now he's working at a factory as a regular worker on the floor. I wanted him to get to know the ground level, to understand the products and the people making them, and then figure out what he should be doing. Some said I was being lenient, but I disagree. For someone as proud as him, working on the factory floor would be a humbling experience. I thought this would be the best lesson for him. He might not be able to do even half of what the workers he looked down upon can do. Through this, I hope he learns it's because of these supportive workers that we can do our jobs. Being nurtured by this company, I don't want to abandon him. I hope he bounces back from this setback, and someday we can work side by side. That's my wish. Months have passed since then, and work has been running smoothly. As for me, I've been promoted to Sales Department Director. Harriet is now an Executive Vice President. My relationships with the coworkers are strong, and we have a solid partnership with the clients, even the ones we had the contract issues with. Looking back, this company saved my life, and now I'm back at the New York headquarters, supporting the company as one of its pillars. I'm liaising with our overseas branches, and we're making progress with new product development. The fruits of my labor over the years are finally paying off. I couldn't be happier. I will continue to grow alongside this company. I watered the small cactus on my desk before heading to a meeting. By the time I returned, the cactus had blossomed with a tiny flower.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.